How you doing, Worguides? Ageless Wrath is definitely the best set for Anora, right?
What if I were to tell you the world is turned upside down and it isn't? It isn't. We are back to the old rulers. Sorgon Arcana and Infernal Roar are still the best. But how do we get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a great place to start. So basically, we both put out fairly similar videos today, unintentionally doing a typical should you summon thing and being like, hey, when you get her, this is how you build her. We both kind of were preaching Ageless Wrath. And then after you watched my video, you're like, you know what? I was thinking about it. I was doing a little testing. I think we're wrong. I think everyone's wrong. Obviously, I know there's gonna be a couple of you in the comments that are like, my guild knew it. Almost everyone I ever talked to, the reason we didn't know it, and I think same for you, is this is the conventional wisdom. Ageless Wrath is the best on Anora. It is worth mentioning, how did we not know sooner? Why did we not test this before? I just kind of accepted that. I tested that Ageless Wrath works on her in a better way than Broken Set. But yeah, we should have taken it the step further. We're going to do that now. But to understand the issue with Anora, right, we have to understand what I got wrong and I think you got wrong and what is actually happening. So we thought this all came down to this part of her talent here called Sanctity, saying she was immune to most buffs and debuffs. However, it's not an immunity to buffs, it's a snapshotting issue. So when Anora summons her summon, which is a one-time thing, he can never die, he can never disappear, he never gets resummoned.
And that's the thing. He is the only one. He is the only summon out of all the heroes in the game that are permanent. And that's also where Wukong will come in, because Wukong and every other summoner, they just played us. They played us massively.
Exactly. So the reason I think some of us never thought about this, and it was a great find, you had Worguides with this snapshot thing we're going to display now, is there's no other summoner in the game, at least nothing coming to mind, where it's a summon right at the start of the battle, and then that summon is never resummoned, never expires, can never die. It's just there the whole time. So at that moment of summoning, which is the start of the battle, that summon inherits the stats and whatever damage boosts are on the summoner. But you never really feel these effects with someone like Wukong, so we're going to display that now because those snapshots keep happening and happening and happening because he summons and resummons and they die and resummon. So over the course of a battle, there are many, many, many Sage clones. So these last, up to only 20 seconds, then they expire and he resummons, or they can die. So they're constantly coming back in. But there's a great test we can show you now with Wukong, and then we'll show you how this doesn't happen with Anora. So what we've got Wukong. We're going to place him right here. Doesn't really matter.
And we're going to let him summon a single clone. Yep.
Exactly. So he's going to get one clone down. So this clone, the snapshot has occurred, right? Right, Worguides? The summoner has now made the summon, and the summon's inheriting whatever stats Wukong has, whatever damage boosts he has. So at this moment, he doesn't have Invigoration. So Worguides and I, we decided to film a little clip for you guys so we could super slow-mo it, because there's just so many random numbers popping up. But you'll see this in a second. Do you want to explain what we're seeing, Worguides?
So yeah, we have one Wukong clone on the field at the moment. That clone has the stats of non-inspiration or non-invigoration Wukong, which means he's gonna deal 32,784 damage throughout his whole life cycle, which you see right there, 32,784. That's the clone, and the 122,000 is Wukong himself.
Yeah, and it's worth saying this clone was summoned before Beelzebub came down and put Invig on Wukong. So now Wukong's going to make a new clone, as people are going to see. Here comes the new clone, and I'll have to pause this because it's a little hard to see. But here, the new clone goes to hit, and watch this.
36,752. And just to drive home the point, you get a waterfall of numbers, and at the very end, you're going to see the original number, and there can only be one single source, and it's the old clone still doing the old damage.
So everybody, you can see this clone just finished the hit. The next clone's about to finish his hit, and you'll see, look at that, 32,784. So even though they're both there, and they both should be getting Invigoration because Wukong has it now, when this clone was summoned at that snapshot, that's why this is a good display of the idea of the concept, he was locked into non-Wukong Invig stats, whereas the second clone got the Invig stats, right?
And this obviously works for Solbern Arcana too. Right? If Wukong ults with his ultimate, his clones after him ulting are gonna be stronger than the clones before he ulted.
Exactly. So let's actually demonstrate this and why it's so weird and wacky with Anora and Labor, because Labor is never resummoned. There's never a second Labor that comes. So he's just locked into that original moment. So you guys will really see that snapshot issue in effect with Anora, right? Because Anora just has her one summon. He's never resummoned. He never dies. So at that original moment, he's locked in. So the first test I want to show, which will make this very clear, is Anora in Ageless Wrath versus Anora with the exact same stats, but a broken set. You can see the only thing that changes here is the minus 30% crit damage. That's the 30% crit damage that we thought made Anora so valuable, because we thought we couldn't build anything else up because of Sanctity. But you'll see in a second that's not the case. So let's actually start with the broken set tests. That's just going to be the easiest to set the baseline. Let's head in here. We're doing Nightmare 4, but we're just using him as a punching bag. This should be pretty easy to see live, so don't worry. And yeah, let's get ready with Anora. Let's place her right here. And you can see she goes, she summons Labor. This first hit is from Anora, and she's hitting for 42,669. And then we'll get a hit from Labor. This is going to be his baseline. If it ever makes contact, there it is. Come on. And he is going to hit for 61,630. So you can see I have a lot of stats I've been keeping here, and this is the broken set, but identical stats. You can see both of these are 21,643 attack and 328% crit damage. Actually, worth mentioning for this, it's 298, but the only difference is you're just effectively not getting the boost from the set. But you can see this is our baseline, 61,042.6K, something like that. Now, let's try it with Ageless Wrath. And what we would have expected, right, Worguides, is we should see the number go up because 30% increase in crit damage. That's why we thought Ageless Wrath was powerful. But we also, we're going to have to look, are we going to see that additional effect happening? So if anyone doesn't know, just as a very, very quick refresher, when you get the Ageless Wrath set complete, which we'll have completed now, you start with just a flat increase in crit damage, but subsequently, over your next 30 critical hits, each one will increase your crit damage by 1%. So let's see that in action now and see if it actually happens. So this is another good snapshot moment. So Anora will be live and variable. She'll be able to grow her crit damage, but because Labor gets that snapshot thing, he cannot be affected. So here we go. Let's hop in. Let's set our new baseline. Anora is hitting for 46,715, and Labor is hitting for...
Give me a second now.
67,474. But now look, Anora's gotten one crit, so the next one she should have 1% more crit damage. And you'll see here with Anora, there it is, 46,810. And then here is Labor. You'll see Anora again. 46, now 985 or something. And then Labor's still at 67,474. You can kind of see it. When the number goes higher, it's because of the Winter's Bite effect. But you can see Anora's number slowly getting higher and higher. Labor's number not. So Anora now is up to 48K, and Labor's just locked in at that 67,000 unless, the Labor ice thing happens. So you can see the number here. Labor's stuck at 67,474. Anora starts at 46,715, but increasingly grows each time. So she's able to have a variable boost. Labor is not. And actually, this is the transition into the big thing, right, Worguides? Because what we found is Labor can have any on-summoning effect. That will get locked in. So something like Infernal Roar, which is at the start, that will get locked into him, right? But then something like Soulbound Arcana, Labor won't get any of that, except Anora will get it the whole battle, because she actually is scaling. She can get all the set boosts, right?
So now all of a sudden you have an Anora that either only gets 60% crit damage or a 50% damage boost. And we all know how the calculations work. And yeah, crit damage,
exactly.
You can get it from gear. And there's a reason Soulbound Arcana and IR are king.
So functionally, the Ageless Wrath Anora starts with 30% more crit damage, can go up to 60% more. The Ageless Wrath Labor starts with 30% more crit damage and cannot go higher. He just gets stuck there. With Infernal Roar, as you're going to see, because of the way Infernal Roar works, and I made as comparable sets as I could make. So you'll see here's the broken. So let's actually compare the broken versus the broken. So you can see our baseline. We're at 298 and 20,226. This goes down 100. This goes up 1.5. I got it pretty dang close. So let's lock that into set new baseline. But you'll see when we go to Infernal Roar, because of the way Infernal Roar works, it's just, this is functional, right? This is at the moment of the snapshot, Worguides. Like, you get that inherent base attack damage. So it's pretty cool. So let's show them very fast. This video is turning out longer than we had anticipated. But again, if you want to see really in-depth testing for full fights, we're going to have that on your channel tomorrow, right, Worguides?
Because we still aren't finished yet. The issue with this is, what does it even tell us? Is a Nora that just gets Sovereign Arcana stronger than a Nora that gets IR on both her and the summon? Is fucking Cataclysm gonna come out of the corner and take the cake with the ring that has a curse faction? Is somehow this whole thing meaningless, and in a gear dungeon, maybe 8 enemies interact better with fucking this guy? There's so many RNG factors. You don't even know it. You have Noxious Breath at 20%. You have Winter's Bite at fucking 20%. And then you have the extra damage against. It's annoying.
The key thing, though, that you guys are going to see here clear as day is, without a doubt, Infernal Roar is better than Ageless Wrath. Then there is the thing to consider with Soulbound Arcana that does affect the ult. So the burst from the ult is affected, whereas Infernal Roar, the burst is not affected, but all these subsequent basic attacks over those next 18 out of the 20 seconds from Labor are affected. So you'll see that here. There's Anora's first hit, 42,615. And there is 61,000 something, 42,615. And then that was with the Winter's Bite. So with Labor Ice, if they're under crowd control, it's always going to go up. But let's wait for that Winter's Bite to fall off so we can get the baseline for Labor. And it's 65, 61 something. Don't take my word 61. For it. I wrote it down. Yeah. So here you go. Yeah, 61,669.
Exactly.
Yeah. And here's the Anora we saw. But look at these numbers that are about to come, because on setup, on deploy, Labor gets locked in and Anora gets locked in. We're going to see some pretty monster numbers from Infernal Roar. Is this going to be better than, like you said, potentially Cataclysm with an amazing faction exclusive ring? To be clear, that's the only way Cataclysm would be better. Or is this going to be, maybe it's not the only way. We'll actually have to see it practically. But is what's the trade-off? The Infernal Roar, general boost versus those big bursts from Soulbound Arcana. Then maybe do you care about total damage, or if you're in Guild Wars defense and you just want big bursts to really lay them out, maybe you do lean Soulbound Arcana. There's a lot of things to balance here, but we just want to take it home with one final test, right, War Guys, just to show people how huge a jump this is.
Just to show you the big numbers, and then we even have our best friend Math to prove that it truly isn't wizardry, but Infernal Roar boosting the damage.
We do love Math. So let me place an Anora.
We don't like Moonton Math. I just coined it Moonton Math, and every time something goes wrong, it's Moonton Math.
And actually, this is pretty good example of Moonton Math, because the numbers are just nearly what you think, but they're not exactly. People will see that in a second.
That's close enough that you have to assume that it might be true.
Yeah, so here's our Infernal Roar, Anora, and Labor, and you'll see, because it's an already existing effect, that 40% basic attack boost is locked into both of them, and most importantly, Labor. So there's Anora for over 59,000. Here comes Labor with his hit. No Winter's Bite. Look at this number, 86,190.
86,190.
Yeah, let's go one more time, because then we're going to have to show people one other thing. There's 59,657. No Winter's Bite. Here comes Labor, and 86,000. So let's let that play out for a minute. And then I'm going to want to read, there's with the Winter's Bite, 95K. I mean, that is a huge, huge jump up from where we were, right? So if you compare Ageless Wrath with 46K and 67K to 59K and 86K. But we can take this one further. So the way Anora's ultimate works, I'll show you guys right now. There's a big burst, right, of AoE damage. So this can be real. This works really well with Soulbound Arcana, up to 10 enemies. But then during the ultimate, it's going to increase damage of Labor by 150%. And then on top of that, that can scale even better if there's a crowd control effect. Like,
you might want to place the healer.
No, we'll just restart so people can see. But watch this. So the numbers actually are going to scale higher still. So I want to quickly pause and actually show you guys. I did do the testing with the ult, like post burst, the basics that come after the ult burst. I did it broken set and Infernal. For the interest of time, just take my word for it. Anora's unaffected. She stayed at 42,615. And then Labor went to 177,731. That is without Winter's Bite. And then all the way up to 203,110. That is with like Winter's Bite. So he gets an extra 15% boost. That's a Labor Ice effect. But now watch this. So let's place Anora here. She'll summon, and then as soon as I can, I'm going to ult. The initial ult will be unaffected because it's a burst move. It doesn't count as a basic attack. But now let's watch. Now there's that continued period with the boost and damage for Labor, not Anora. So we'll see. Here's Anora's hit coming in at the same 59,000.
Winter's Bite is active.
So now here's Winter's Bite active on Labor, and he's putting up One moment. 245K. I hope you guys saw that. I think I might just leave it on 1x and not super slow-mo, but just take it in, guys. 270K. So that's with the Winter's Bite. 270K. Winter's Bite is off. 245K. So look how stark a jump that is, right? So that's scaling off the Infernal Roar because at the snapshot, they locked in that 40% basic attack boost. And aside from that initial burst, everything else in the duration is revved up basic attack damage. But here we go. Math time. So you can take these numbers, right? So the broken set Anora that I did off camera, please take my word for it. When you did that, her labor gets 177,731 when it's not Winter's Bite. So that's functionally the number we're going to use. And you can just take then the boost with the Infernal Roar set at 245,435, subtract the 177K from that, and then divide by 177 to see the growth factor, 38.1%. Worguides, what is the boost from Infernal Roar?
38.1%.
It's 40%, but Moon's on math, right? It's essentially.
Yeah. And for those of you curious, obviously works for the basic attack. Like, look at this. You have 40,000, you have 60,000. 40%.
Yeah, very, very, very clean, right? Yeah, you can see it with her really clean. But then you can see what does Labor Ice do if there's a crowd control effect. It's plus 15%. So it's multiplicative, not additive. That's like kind of the Moonton math. I mean, it's not necessarily wrong, but just for clarity. So it should be 55% if it was additive. So the 40% damage from the Infernal Roar, the extra 15 goes up to 55 with the Labor Ice effect under crowd controlled units. So it should be 55. We're seeing 52.3 when you take that 270K minus the 177K over 177K. So you can actually see it really, really happening. So we can confirm that that is the mechanism in play here. I think that's basically where we want to leave it, and we want to do the formal, like, real life, not just boring math testing on your channel tomorrow. But I think I want to apologize. I was slightly ignorant, right? I had heard this wisdom that Ageless Wrath was the best. I tested to make sure it worked better than a broken set. It did, but the fool I am, I didn't test Infernal Roar and certainly not Soulbent Arcana. We'll do that tomorrow. But any final thoughts, Worguides?
Man, AoE heroes are just awful to tell, because if you bring him into any AoE content, there's just so many heroes to hit, so many factors. Like, how are you supposed to know if it's better? Especially if your benchmark is gear rate 1 with a fixed amount of health that technically changes if you bring Enter here. It's just easier to see if you're wrong on single target.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's crazy with AoE guys, and especially because the natural thought would be gear rate 1, where it's like, if you kill too fast, then they didn't get healed, so there actually was less health to hit and less DPS to make. So you could see someone performing better because they're performing worse. It's the biggest headache. Moonton needs to give us, at least on test servers, some kind of like vacuum arena where it's logging our hits on the side for us to read. I mean, how nice would that be?
What they really need to give us, and what we need to end this with, is make Labor resummonable. Make Anora even stronger. We need to petition for now. Okay, we kind of don't. She's really good already. But if they were to change anything, it would be, for example, resummoning Labor every time you ult, bringing her more in line with every other summoner. But it also might be a decision on their part. Who knows? Moonton math strikes again.
Yeah, but imagine that. Yeah, if every time you ulted, Labor resummon so you could lock in the new boosts, then Soulbent Arcana would be the super duper king we're used to seeing, because you'd get it on the burst and you'd get it on the basics after. Anyway, Worguides, thank you so much. This has been like a marathon 3 hours of us trying to troubleshoot this. We thank everyone for their patience as we figure this out. Please, please, please look for the video on Worguides' channel tomorrow, and we'll see you real soon. Share with your mother. Bye.
Peace.
Fastidious.